In 384 before Christ, in the northern Greek town of Stagira, a child was born who would become the most curious person who ever lived. He wanted to know everything, every plant, every animal, every star, every government, every poem. His name was Aristotle. At 17, Aristotle arrived at Plato's academy in Athens. He stayed for 20 years, first as a student, then as a teacher. He was Plato's most brilliant student, but he was also Plato's greatest critic. When Plato died, Aristotle did not become the head of the academy. He had already become something else himself. Aristotle founded his own school, the Lyceum. He taught while walking, and his students walked with him. They were called the Peripatetics, the walkers. He believed thinking moved better when the body moved. For 13 years he walked and taught in that garden, asking questions about everything. He was the world's first systematic biologist. He dissected animals, studied embryos, classified over 500 species of plants and animals. He was wrong about much. He thought the brain was a cooling organ for the blood, and the heart was the seat of thought. But his method, observe, classify, reason, became the foundation of science. When Alexander of Macedon was 13 years old, his father, King Philip, asked Aristotle to become his tutor. For 3 years, the greatest philosopher taught the boy who would become Alexander the Great. What did Aristotle teach him? Homer, ethics, philosophy, medicine, a love of learning. Alexander carried Aristotle's annotated copy of Homer on all his campaigns. He wrote on everything. Logic, he invented it. Physics, metaphysics, ethics, politics, rhetoric, poetry, psychology, economics. He wrote about dreams, about memory, about sleep, about the movement of animals. He wrote about friendship, saying it was one of life's essential goods. 300 works in his lifetime, though only 47 survive. He was the first to systematically study living things, not to find their spiritual meaning, but to understand how they actually worked. He cut open sea urchins and described their anatomy. He watched chicks develop inside eggs day by day. He was not merely a philosopher sitting in a study. He was a man with dirt on his hands who loved the world as it actually was. He also invented the theory of drama. In his Poetics, he said tragedy works by inducing catharsis, a purging of pity and fear through art. When we watch a great tragedy, we feel these emotions fully and are somehow cleansed by them. This idea that art heals has never been improved upon. Every filmmaker, every novelist, every playwright still works in Aristotle's shadow. His great disagreement with Plato was this. Plato believed real things were ideas. The perfect form of a chair existed in an ideal realm, and every real chair was an imperfect copy. Aristotle said, no, the form of the chair exists, I in the chair, not separately. Reality is here, in the world we can touch and measure. Look down, not up. Observe, don't dream. When Alexander the Great died in 323, anti-Macedonian feeling swept Athens. Aristotle was charged with impiety, the same charge that had killed Socrates. He fled Athens, saying he would not allow the Athenians to sin twice against philosophy. He went to Chalcis, his mother's home city, where he died 1 year later, aged 62. His works survived by extraordinary chance, buried in a pit, rediscovered centuries later, copied by Arab scholars during the Islamic Golden Age, and finally returned to Europe in the 12th century. Thomas Aquinas called him simply the philosopher. Medieval European universities were built on his logic and his physics. For 1,500 years after his death, Aristotle was the authority on almost everything. In his Ethics, Aristotle said the highest human good is eudaimonia, often translated as happiness, but better translated as flourishing. Not pleasure, not wealth, not fame, but the full exercise of your capacities in accordance with virtue over a complete life. A person flourishes when they're doing what they were made to do and doing it well. That is happiness. He studied politics not to find the ideal state. That was Plato's project, but to understand how actual states worked. He collected and analyzed 158 different constitutions. He concluded that the best government was one ruled by the middle class, not the very rich, not the very poor, because extremes lead to tyranny. He was describing democracy 2,000 years before it became common. The Lyceum he founded continued after his death. His library became one of the great collections of the ancient world, the model for the Library of Alexandria. His students carried his method across the Mediterranean. When Rome became an empire, it was Aristotle's logic and rhetoric that Roman orators used. When Christianity needed a philosophical framework, it turned to Aristotle. It was Arab scholars, Ibn Rushd, Ibn Sina, Al-Farabi, who kept Aristotle's texts alive when Europe had lost them. They translated, commented, debated, extended his work. The Arabic names for Aristotle were the first teacher and the master of those who know. Without the Islamic Golden Age, Aristotle might have been lost entirely. The West rediscovered its greatest thinker through Arabic translation. What made Aristotle different from all other ancient philosophers was his refusal to stop at one subject. He could not understand poetry without understanding the human soul. He could not understand the soul without understanding the body. He could not understand the body without understanding all living things. Every question led to 10 more. He followed them all. He never stopped being curious. The roots of education are bitter, but the fruit is sweet. Aristotle, Stagira, Macedonia, 384 to 322 before Christ.